This forum is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Los Altos Mountain View and the Mountain View Public Library. We really value our partnership with the library in sponsoring events like these that support the community. Well, I would like to extend my welcome this evening to our candidates here at the forum, and we're featuring candidates for the El Camino Healthcare District. I am Julie Cates, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters for Los Altos Mountain View, and I will be the moderator for this evening's forum. A word about the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization of women and men established to promote political responsibility through informed, active participation in government. The League does not support, oppose, or evaluate political candidates or parties. Although our nonpartisanship policy does not permit endorsement of political candidates, we do, after careful study, take positions on political issues. And the League invites anyone who is interested in government, politics, and serving the community to come join us, become a member. And we also encourage you to visit our website for voter information and resources, and visit votersedge.org online for more voter information. This forum is being videotaped by KMVT, and the recording will be made available by the League of Women Voters via a link from our website, lwvlamv.org. So the format for today's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to make an opening statement. Next, the candidates will respond to questions from our audience. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the submitted questions, which should be of general interest such that any of the candidates may be able to respond. We have question sorters who are League members who will review and select from the submitted questions. And then finally, the candidates will each have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. To help keep us on track of time, we have our timer volunteers sitting here in the front row. In the interest of time and decorum, the League asks our audience and candidates to abide by the following. Audience questions for candidates must be written on cards provided by the League. League volunteers are circulating through the room to hand out cards and collect audience questions. We ask for no audience demonstration, clapping during the forum. And as always, please turn off any electronic device that may beep or make any sound, because as we stated, this forum is being videotaped. And the videotape's content will be shared in its entirety to ensure that any remarks made are not distorted. So candidates, I as moderator will enforce firm time limits. After I say, thank you, your time is up, please end your comments. Candidates are requested not to interrupt each other. The candidates have brought no support materials to the forum, but they may have a notepad and pen or a laptop to take notes. They have provided campaign material, which is available, I think we've put it outside the room, on a table outside this room. So with that, I now would like to introduce the 4 candidates who are running for 2 open 4-year terms for the El Camino Healthcare District. Now, candidates are seated in the order based on random drawing done prior to the forum. So we're going to start with Mike Kaspernek, George Ting, Peter Fung, and James Davis. So welcome, candidates, and thank you all for agreeing to participate in today's forum. We're now ready to begin. We will start with each candidate making their opening statement, with Mike Kaspernak leading, and then we'll go sequentially down the line, left to right from the audience's viewpoint. Mike, okay. You may start.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming out. I'm Mike Kasperzak, so anyways, just to, not that you'll hear it when you vote, but anyways, I want to thank you all for coming out. I'd heard that 4 years ago there were only 4 voters that showed up for the Healthcare District Forum, so it's great to see so many of you. I thought I'd start off in telling you a little bit about myself, and then I'll tell you more about positions and endorsements and things as we sum up at the end. But I think it's important for you to know that, you know, as a member of the district board, we represent the community. And I think having a feel and involvement in the community is really important. I started out my career, I've lived in Mountain View within the district for over 40 years now. I came here directly after college. I went to law school, and so unlike our physicians here, yes, I was a lawyer. I did that for about 12 years, but then I saw the light and I became a professional mediator. And I spent 25 years working with people to help resolve their disputes, serving as that intermediary rather than being, you know, their warrior for them. 25 years as a mediator. During that period, I started getting involved in local government. I became a planning commissioner and a Parks and Recreation commissioner for the city of Mountain View. And then I was elected to 4 terms on the Mountain View City Council, where I had the honor and privilege of serving as mayor of this wonderful town for two terms. I thought we had 2 minutes. Did I get the minute? Oh, geez, that was fast. Okay, so it's really important to know, because there are no members of the board of directors from Mountain View, even though Mountain View has the most population in the district.
Thank you. George Ting.
Good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here. I may seem more enthusiastic than anyone else because I'm a total newbie and I'm really pumped for this. Unlike Mike, I've never served public office. I'm pretty impressed with what it takes to have a campaign. But and my name's a lot easier than his. So let me tell you why I'm running. I've been a physician at El Camino Hospital for 40 years. I came to Stanford because that's usually when you do your fellowship, that's where you end up. So I've been here. I'm really dug in here. I love the community. I love the hospital. And I think most of the things I want to do for the hospital I've done in those 40 years. You know, yeah, I hope you look at my resume. I've been chief of staff. I'm professor, clinical professor at Stanford. I've run the dialysis unit. I've run QA for the physicians. But the thing that makes me really want to run is I think the potential risk to the hospital is that it's a single independent hospital. And you have to be very, very careful strategically to have the right partners, especially physician partners, as we move forward. So I've worked on that for decades, only with partial success. But I'm not sure about where the hospital is going with their physician strategy now. I think I decided I disagree with it. And I don't want to turn it over. I want to add to it. I want to make it better. I think if we have a good strategy, it'll help keep the hospital independent and accountable only to the community, not to a big organization in Sacramento or Palo Alto. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Fung.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. My name is also easy to read and to remember. I'm an independent neurologist of more than 40 years. my number one goal is to promote wellness and health in the district. As the former medical director for the stroke program, elevating it to one of the best in the nation, I have the experience and the expertise to improve all the other healthcare services of the hospital to the same level of excellence. As one of the founders of the Chinese Health Initiative, which is highly successful in reducing the poor healthcare of the Chinese population, it is my intent to extend this to all ethnicity in the area. On the board, I'm the chair for the last 3 years. I'm also a hospital board member. I'm the chair of the governance committee as well, and also a member of the quality committee. I lead the effort for the board's daily activities, its oversight of the hospital, and I'm proud to say, as a result, El Camino Hospital has never been in better financial shape, while at the same time providing the best of care to our patients and a magnet atmosphere for physicians, nurses, and payers. 15 seconds? My time is up. I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. James Davis.
Thank you very much for you all coming out here this evening. I'm really feeling bad for Mike because all the rest of us have fairly easy last names to remember. So Mike, maybe you change your name next time. Anyway, I was a career police officer. You know, I served the communities of San Jose and Sunnyvale for 38 years in the field of law enforcement and firefighting. You know, so service has always been a part of my life. When I left the Public Safety Department in 2011, I ran for Sunnyvale City Council, and I was elected for a 5-year term, where I served on 15 different assignments, which gave me a broad breadth of government and what we do and how we do it and how to be effective. I served on the Valley Transportation Authority. I served on the ABAG Board of Directors. I served on a wide variety of the County Roadway Commission, the Emergency Operations Council. So I have a lot of experience in government. And that experience will translate into me being a good director on the El Camino Hospital District. I think we all realize that the El Camino Hospital District has had a fairly interesting history. You know, going back to when we were first formed as a rural district because we were underpopulated, and that's how we became a special district, and that's how we derive tax funds from the people who live within our boundaries. And then in later years, you know, we formed the hospital corporation, and we sold a lot of the assets of the district to the association or to the corporation. But I'm here because I'm most interested in making sure that you have a good watchdog that's going to watch where your tax dollars are going.
Thank you, James. Well, thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. Let's give them a round of applause. We're now going to move on to addressing questions that have been submitted by the audience. And candidates, you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to be varying the order, going right to left to right, starting at different points in the lineup here. So we'll work on this all together. So our first question, and for this question, we're going to start with James at the end, and we're going to work our way back to Mike. And the first question: what are the 3 most important responsibilities of an El Camino Healthcare District Board member?
Well, the number one responsibility is to make sure that your tax dollars are being used for what they were originally designed to be used for, and that's the development of our hospital and then to also, you know, watch carefully what the hospital corporation does, because the members of the district board of directors are also members of the board of directors for the hospital council. I think we all remember, when the district did, or not the district, but the corporation did something a little bit outstanding, and they went out to Los Gatos, way outside of the boundaries of their district, and they bought the El Camino, or the Los Gatos Community Hospital. And there was a lot of concern in regards to whether your tax funds were being used for that kind of outside purchase. And, so I'm greatly concerned about making sure that our money is spent wisely.
Thank you. And now Peter Fung.
Yeah, thank you. The most important priority and number one priority is to ensure that the hospital is providing the best of care to our patients. This is a daily process that has to continue. There can be improvements along the way. We want to become the top decile in the nation. The second priority, as Jim has mentioned, is to work with intelligent people in the community to optimize the use of the tax dollars to give it back to the community, especially to reduce the unmet health needs. And this process should be accountable and transparent. The third priority that I myself has is to evolve the hospital system into a healthcare system so that your...
Thank you, Peter. We're now going to move on to George Ting.
I think any board's primary responsibility is to make sure you have the right strategic plan. You want to be climbing the right mountain. The second one is you want to hire management that you think can do it, and you have to monitor them and make sure they're on track. So what are the goals? Number one, clinical excellence. I think things like clinical care is over-talked and maybe under-delivered. It has to come from the top. I think it should come from the board, and they should say, this is what good clinical service looks like. Second is financial performance, and we've had a banner year, although I don't know, when you miss the projections by 100 million, when it's to the positive, it's good, but you want to make sure that it's more accurate next time. But if we have that margin, we can help others. And last is to have the right strategy to remain independent with the right partnerships.
Thank you. Mike Casper, Zach.
All right, and thank you very much. So as from the district board of directors, the most important thing I believe is representing the community's interests, the district's interests to the board of directors. You elect us to do the job. And so representing those interests and needs to the board and then to the hospital board, I think is critical and job one. Everybody has also talked about the sort of financial stewardship, looking out where the tax dollars are going, preparing for that rainy day. We all know the economy is going to change. It just keeps hanging on a little bit longer, but it is going to turn on us. And then the third thing is really to exercise sound governance procedures and processes. To be a strong and high-performing board is critical, and what that means is not getting involved in the day-to-day details, but really focusing on policy and strategy.
Thank you, and you all have adjusted to having a max of 1 minute to respond to these questions. We appreciate that. Okay, for our second question, I'll give the question and then I'll talk about our order. Well, maybe let's first talk about the order. Okay, this time we're going to start with Peter Fung, and we're going to wrap around to James Davis, back to Mike, and to George. And the question is, do you have any conflicts of interest with the operations of the district hospital? For this question, we're starting...
Simple answer is no.
Okay.
No, there's absolutely no conflict of interest on my behalf. I don't have any relationship with the hospital other than the surgeries that I've had performed there.
I have no conflicts with the operations of the hospital. I do serve on the board of several nonprofits, at least one of which I think does receive some of the community benefit funding from the hospital, and that would be a conflict of interest from my, my board work. But other than that, nothing else.
Okay. For our next question, we're going to start. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
I must look really honest. I don't have any conflicts of interest. I was interested in doing some board work 10, 15 years ago, but I was medical director for the El Camino dialysis services contract through the hospital and through the board. I didn't think that was a good situation, so I refrained. We made a very difficult decision to divest the dialysis unit. It was for the good of the community, so I don't have the conflict anymore. And I'm also about 70% retired. I find that the less I work, the more I enjoy it, so.
Thank you. And this time we'll kick off with George, and then we'll wrap to Mike and around to James and end up with Peter. And the question is, what do you think of the district's current strategy to compete in this very competitive marketplace in organizations like Stanford and Sutter Health? And that's A, point A. And B, what do you think the strategies should be for the El Camino Hospital Healthcare District? Okay, so we're starting this question with George. And at any time, if you'd like me to, if any of you, when it comes to your turn, if you'd like me to repeat the question, I'd be happy to do so.
Did you repeat the question?
Yes.
In less than a minute.
What do you think of the district's current strategy to compete in this very competitive marketplace against organizations like Stanford and Sutter Health? What do you think the hospital strategy should be?
Okay, thank you. Well, what do I think about competing? We have to compete, and I think we can compete really well. We're not going to do heart transplants and stand up against Stanford that way, but we offer things that a lot of people like, the service, the access. I think El Camino, to compete just like Stanford and PAMF, have widened their footprint over the county. And there's debate about that, but I don't think the hospital is going to survive or do well without widening that footprint. It becomes more secure, and I think the way to compete going forward is we need a good cadre of our own physicians to work with the hospital, physicians that have no conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Mike?
So in order for El Camino to remain a strong community-based hospital, it's imperative that it is able to compete head-to-head with these other institutions. And I think the strategy, they've recently changed the name from El Camino Hospital to El Camino Health. They're becoming more about health care, not just a hospital. That can include clinics, maybe a clinic in North Sunnyvale and things like that. We have to take medical services and health to the people, not just rely on them coming to the hospital when they need surgery or something like that. So I really believe in that, and I think that, as well as some of the other issues, are really critical, important. If the hospital is not financially sustainable, it becomes at risk to being sold or lost to corporate healthcare ventures, much like Tenant, and we've seen what has happened with those organizations.
James?
I think what we have to understand as a community, what you're voting for is a person that represents you on the hospital district. And the hospital district is different than the corporation that runs the hospital. So as a district representative, a person that's in charge of making sure that your tax dollars are used to provide you the best quality structure and and buildings and equipment, that's where, the hospital district strategy has to be very strong. Now I recognize that the hospital district members are also part of the corporation board, but we're only 50% of the board now, and I think that what we also have to recognize is the Harvey Rose Accounting Agency did a accounting of the district, and they found that over 50% of the people that come to our district come from outside of our sphere of influence.
We're now ready for Peter.
Yes, in this very hostile and complicated Bay Area healthcare market, having a very strong, wise, and intelligent strategy is of utmost importance. This is what I do. We have a war room full of posters, paths, graphs that show how we're going to compete to become the leader of healthcare in the Silicon Valley, to become the hospital that people think of in the area, to become the #1 hospital in this area. This is not going to be easy. It's a very complicated. I wish I have 100 minutes or 100 hours to talk, but I'll be happy to speak with any one of you one-on-one and tell you what the direction we are going. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll start with Mike and then move down the line, George, Peter, and James. And our audience asks, what do you think are the most significant challenges facing El Camino Healthcare District in the next few years?
Well, I think the most challenging one is going to be the issue we just talked about, and that's competition. Maintaining our position with respect to Stanford and PAMF. That's going to include how we work more successfully with physicians who are beginning to align with groups like Sutter Health and that sort of thing. I think the other thing, and it is coming forward, is going to be the next recession. We're going to be going from having a very strong net revenue to possibly really hurting as time goes on. And I think we need to be preparing for that in terms of our yearly finances, but also our long-term financial sustainability.
Thank you. George?
Without a doubt in my mind, the biggest risk is being an independent hospital without a physician partnership. Right now, PAMF has grown to 60 to 65% of the business. Any of you in business know what it's like to have one customer that dominates you like that. Your independence and decision-making is at risk. El Camino has to build its own cadre of physicians that is loyal only to itself, and it needs a strategy to make sure that those physicians will succeed. I don't believe the current plan does that. I'm running to try to make that plan work.
Thank you. Peter?
Our strategic plans covers all the aspects that the other gentlemen have spoken about. Physician strategy, physician integration occupies about 1/3 of what we'll be doing. In essence, we are recruiting physicians. We are having a 1206G in order to employ or partner with physicians. We'll be also partnering with groups. You'll be hearing very soon, some of these are confidential, which I cannot reveal at this time, but in no time, in 2022, we're going to have an 80 new physicians in the area to take care of it. Only the people that are inside, and we are working day and night to help with this.
Thank you, Peter. James?
The hospital has done a significant job at making sure that we're experts in special fields. We have probably the best women's care facilities of any hospital in the area. So we're not competing with Stanford or O'Connor or Valley Medical Center in that regard. We're a stroke center. We're renowned throughout the area for our ability to handle and take care of stroke patients. And, Stanford isn't trying to compete with us, neither is Valley Medical Center. They all are trying to do a similar job, but, we all know that there's plenty of work out there in these different fields to take care of. Our biggest issue is making sure that we have the facilities and making sure that our tax dollars go to build and keep up the facilities that support those services.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll start with Peter, then go to James, Mike, and George. And the question is, El Camino Hospital has a C grade from Leapfrog Hospital Scorecard. They have red zone scores on multiple safety issues. At a recent board meeting, it was reported that employees fear reporting safety concerns. What will the candidates do to make sure that patient safety is the #1 top priority?
Certainly it is. When you want to go to the hospital, you want to get better, you don't want to get worse. So the district board members providing oversight to the hospital board members, and we have quality committees which break out into smaller committees looking into every area. Hospital complications, including hospital-related infections and so on, are the #1 priority. We are improving in all areas. Doesn't say that we are the best in the area or in the whole nation. There's a lot of categories that we are leading. So in a year or two, we'll be getting out of the red zones on some of this area, and we'll be considered as the hospital with the fewest complication. It takes time.
Thank you, Peter. James.
Well, this is very disturbing news because of the fact that safety of our patients and the people who visit our hospital is probably our #1 concern. And it's at times when these kinds of problems surface that the board of directors has to take it on their own, to investigate and find out why these kinds of reports are being made, and reporting back to the full board and making recommendations that we can solve these problems. And it has to be done by the board of directors. It can't be done by the hospital staff or other agencies. The reason being is it is their first priority, the district board's first priority, to make sure safety is paramount.
Thank you. Mike.
So unfortunately, one of the things that the way the hospital is set up with the district board and the hospital board is this is not so much a district board issue, but district board members also sit on the hospital board. Of course, like any governmental agency, one board member is just one vote. So it is incumbent upon any board member to raise the issue with the rest of the board and to ensure that the board demands of the medical staff the investigation and the strategy to change procedures so that those scores can be increased and raised. But it's a complicated thing because the board members are not the people that actually manage the hospital. That's why we have, the staff that does that. But they are accountable to the CEO, and the CEO is accountable to the board. And if they're not doing the job, then somebody has to be held accountable.
Thank you. George.
I have an answer that reflects that I've been in the trenches a long time. Enforcing safety and making sure everything's done right is like whack-a-mole. You can discourage people. You can only tell nurses so many times, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. There are a lot of things, and you get a discouraged workforce. The way to do safety right is to get the culture right from the bottom. You get the people providing the care to get together and say, what can we do to understand the consequence? They deliver the energy and the initiative to say, this is what we want to do and this is where we want to be. You don't whack them from the top, because I've been there 40 years. I've seen a lot of top-down stuff. Works great for some things, not well for other things. I would get, starting with housekeeping, bring it up from there.
Thank you. For the next question, we're going to start with James at the end and then work our way back, Peter, George, and end with Mike. And this is a question, we're going to continue this thread. What are your thoughts on the current governance structure of the hospital board, which includes appointed members of the hospital board and committees? So again, James?
Well, you know, the current structure is the outcropping of an investigation by the civil grand jury and of the accounting agency, Harvey Rose, which did the study for LAFCO, because there were some serious concerns in regards to how the money was being spent, how it was being derived, where it was going, and the fact that the district board also was the hospital board. So now we've changed that structure in response to those studies, and now we have more people on the hospital board, and there's a wider divergence of interest and backgrounds that can make decisions on the hospital side. But I think that it's important that we continue to do a good job at making sure that we're watching what is happening at our hospital.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, you probably feel now that running a hospital is no easy chore, and that's what we notice. So on the hospital board, having the district board member who may not be healthcare oriented may not be the most appropriate. So several months ago, as chair of the governance committee and chair of the district board, I went out to the community to ask people, should some of the district board member not be on the hospital board if they so desire, or to be chosen not to be on the hospital board, but to increase the room for subject experts. And we managed to increase the board size by 2. I think if 2 of the district board members can have their seat to be taken by experts, then we have more competency on the hospital board.
Thank you. George?
Well, I hate to answer questions where I'm really not sure of the answer. It's not for lack of trying. The roles and responsibility of the district board versus the hospital board, especially with its expansion, still isn't clear to me. And maybe it's me, maybe it's the communication, I don't know. I'd like to understand it better. It makes sense to some people, but if I gave you an answer right now, it's one that's not well formed that I have, and I just need to learn about what the intent is and how well are we executing the intent.
Mike?
So, as many people know, living in the community for a long time, the hospital has been through a number of changes in its structure. And while no structure is perfect, I think given the division between the district and the hospital board, the nonprofit, and having now subject matter expertise on the hospital board, I think is a good direction to be headed. And I think it is worthwhile to give that governance style the opportunity to really prove itself. If you're constantly changing how the organization is structured, you're going to spend all your time on that and not on more important things like patient care, quality of service, and outcomes, which I think are most important for our patients and our community.
For our next question, we'll start with George, and then we'll go to Peter, James, and end with Mike. This is a little bit of a long question, bear with me, but it gets into some good specifics. The El Camino Community Benefits Committee makes substantial grants to the underserved and the poor in our community. El Camino is a 501c3 and as such does not pay taxes and is required by law to provide community benefits to enhance health. Which grants would you eliminate or which would you continue? For example, there's grants to CSA, there's grants to Mountain View Day Workers, there's grants to Hope Corner, CHAC, and YMCA. So again, for this question, we're going to start with George, and let me know at any time if any of you would like me to repeat it.
Well, reflecting some of the difficulties in healthcare delivery, I think there are people who are terribly underserved, and they need assistance, and I can't think of a better use of tax dollars than to help those people who really need it. There are always competing interests. I don't know that I can say, I like this, I don't like that. I think there should be a very good, clear, transparent process for the hospital saying, one, this is a program that we should build. We shouldn't farm it out. And this is important because, and make it clear to the community, this one doesn't make sense for us to build. We'll buy it, or we'll use it, or we'll pay this organization. So it's a business decision, but the priorities, there has to be some clear pathway so that everyone gets input, including the community.
Peter.
Would you please repeat the question? I think there may
Yes.
be some mistakes in the question. I'm sorry, because it's kind of complicated issue.
The question is, the El Camino Community Benefits Committee makes substantial grants to the underserved and the poor in our community. El Camino is a 501c3 and as such does not pay taxes and is required by law to provide community benefits to enhance health. Which grants would you eliminate or which would you continue? And that might be grants to CSA, the Mountain View Day Workers Program, Hope's Corner, CHAC, YMCA, or there may be others.
I should be given more time because I want to explain to, hopefully when people listen to the tape, we know that there are two entities. There's the El Camino Healthcare District, which provide benefit to the community through the tax dollars. And in the year 2018, there's a total of $6.9 million provided for this unmet healthcare need. The hospital, which I think the question addressed, provides $63 million to the community. So I don't understand the question, but there may be a misunderstanding of the person making the questions. And I'll be happy to provide you with detail. And there will be a comprehensive report sent out to all the members of the community.
Thank you. James.
Well, of the listed organizations that you read off there a few minutes ago, I've been very much involved with a lot of them. And I know that they provide our community with some extremely important benefits. I served on the CHAC Board of Directors at one time, and I know that the kind of services they provide to our young people is so needed. I've been involved with the YWCA and some of their programs with women and other things that they do within their organization, and I know that that's very important to our communities. The hospital district or the healthcare district provides a community funding for some of these things, and the hospital corporation, does the same. I wouldn't eliminate anything. I'd add if I could.
Thank you. Mike?
As Jim was just saying, there are 2 community benefit programs, and all of them relate to health and wellness issues, regardless of the organization, whether it's the Day Workers Center, CHAC, CSA, and that sort of thing. Peter also indicated that there are over $60 million from the hospital, but only about $6 million of that is actually grants. The rest of that is charity care to low-income people who come to the hospital and can't afford it, and so they get their care for free, which is laudable and should be done. I personally have an issue with the districts taking tax dollars and just redonating them to the community. I think there should personally be a closer nexus between those tax dollars and healthcare through the hospital. I think all of those organizations are worthy and should get the money they've been getting, but probably through the hospital's program itself.
Thank you, Mike. For our next question, we'll start with Mike, and then we're going to wrap around to James, Peter, and George. So for this question, what is your opinion on purchasing hospitals outside of the current district, such as the Los Gatos Hospital?
Well, we talked earlier about the competitive pressures, and I think expanding the service area of El Camino Health is vital and critical to its long-term success. Staying just an isolated, independent hospital in Mountain View probably does not keep us competitive and probably means in the long run we would lose our community hospital. So I do support, and again, that's not with tax dollars, that's with revenue generated from the hospital, purchasing hospitals, and providing health care to communities like Los Gatos and other communities, perhaps like North Sunnyvale, getting clinics out there and clinics elsewhere in the county.
James?
Well, it's vitally important that we continue to do what our mission is, and that is to provide health care for the people who give us the tax dollars. And the tax dollars that we receive is supposed to go for structures and infrastructure. So we have absolutely no business going to Los Gatos and buying a hospital. No, our tax dollars weren't involved in the purchase, but our tax dollars actually leveraged the ability of the hospital corporation to be able to go to Los Gatos and buy that hospital. We need to maintain and increase services to the people within our sphere of influence, as was strongly suggested by LAFCO and the Harvey Rose and the civil grand jury.
Thank you. Peter?
Yes, I just want to make 2 points, and that will answer that question, and hopefully you understand that. More than 50% of the income of the hospital and more than 50% of the cases served by the hospital are from outside the district. Point number 1. Point number 2, the charter as well as the mission of El Camino Healthcare District is that the district is formed to maintain, establish, operate or assist to operate healthcare facility and health services both within and outside the district for patients, for people in the district and served by the district. So that's the mission of the healthcare district. And you can look it up in the web.
Thank you. George?
I don't see a conflict there. I think the tax dollars that the district pays, those benefits should stay in the district. But I think the district also wants the hospital to be successful, and you can't be successful with one site in these days. Healthcare delivery, insurers, everyone, they want you to have a large enough footprint so if their patients move out of the district, they're still covered. And also very important, is spreading out those fixed indirect costs that would just bring down a single institution. You have to have economies of scale. You have to have geographical footprint. But that doesn't mean you take any of the district tax dollars out of the district.
Thank you. So for our next question, we're going to start with Peter, go to James, come back to Mike, and end with George. In what ways would you collaborate with other governmental entities to achieve the district's goals?
This is a great question, and I need to ponder and think for a while. I think daily we are collaborating with the government, with the city, well, within the district. We are working collaboratively on healthcare delivery and issues to help the population. We are doing that already. How else can we do it better? Well, if we can improve the traffic on Grand Road, that would be an improvement. But there are issues. When you want to go to reach the goal, there are difficulties along the way which you have to encounter and labor.
James.
Well, my experience in government has taught me that each form of government, each government organization has an effect on its neighboring governments. So yes, I think it's very important that the hospital district, collaborates with the wide variety of different governance organizations that we come in contact with, the school districts, our city councils, our board of supervisors, LAFCO, all of which have an impact on us at one point or another. So it's very important to continue to keep those lines of communications open and to have people that are willing and able to go out to those organizations and make an impact.
Mike.
So in addition to some of the things that have already been alluded to in terms of just sort of intergovernmental relations and planning and traffic, we have a number of agencies. We've got, 4 cities, how many school districts? Those all have employees. The hospital could be entering into healthcare agreements with each of these employers, where the hospital could become this, the preferred provider or something like that. I don't know what extent that is being done, but all of those governmental agencies are employers, and all of those could ultimately sort of be customers of El Camino Health, again, to increase our competitiveness. So, it's business.
George.
So one of the strategies I'm proposing is when you're an independent hospital, you need strong partners. You need partners in government, you need partners in business. If Google decides they want to self-insure their own employees, that's a two-way street. They don't know how to do it. We need their patience. And same for government. If you have an open dialogue, that's how you get them to understand what your issues are, and that's how you get to understand their concerns. So partnerships, business, government, NGOs, physicians, those are all necessary to make for strength when you're standing by yourself.
For our next question, we'll start with George, then move to Mike, James, and end with Peter. It's a question about accountability to the community. How will you assess, or how should the board assess, the healthcare needs of the district's residents? And how will you check that you're meeting those needs? Would you like me to repeat it?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think so.
Yes. Okay, well, we're going to start this question with George. How will you assess the healthcare needs of the district's residents? And then how will you assess that you're meeting the needs, or how well you're meeting the needs of the district's residents?
That's a difficult question because there isn't that much information that comes in about exactly what needs are unmet in the community. I think there are a lot, and I think there are cost issues, there's access issues. How does the hospital assess that? They certainly need outreach to understand what the community concerns are, and they do need some way to measure who isn't getting adequately covered besides the one that show up in the emergency room as an emergency without funds. So there's a lot the hospital does, but it would take quite an initiative to really understand what the community needs are.
Thank you. Mike?
So the hospital already does healthcare needs assessments, I think, every 3 years. Part of that is what the community benefit program is based on, and I support doing that. There are lots of other tools available. I'm not personally couldn't name them, but I don't think you need to go out and reinvent the wheel. Healthcare is a massive industry in this country, and there are a lot of people doing needs assessments. And I'm confident that management can identify the right tools to do that. More importantly, though, as a member of the boards, I think it's really important to be in touch with the community, to know what the community wants. And I think it's time for individual board members to create new ways of interacting with the community through programs such as Polco, Open Town Hall, using social media, all is ways of identifying what individual needs and concerns are of the community.
Thank you. James?
If the hospital is already doing an outreach on a schedule of every 3 to 4 years of doing an assessment, I think that that's a smart and strong thing to continue to do. If we're not doing it, we need to do it in a very serious fashion. We also need to make sure that it's an independent study, and that we're getting an outside organization to come in and take a look and to go out into the various communities, to get their opinions of what we're doing. But I do agree with Mike in regards to members of the district board, going out and finding their communities, holding town halls, blogging, using social media. Those can all be valuable assets to a board member for his continuing work.
Peter?
I'm honored to serve on the highly awarded Community Benefit Advisory Council. As you were said before, Mike, indeed, every 3 years, there are 15 organizations together to find out what the healthcare needs assessment, and we follow that. For all the grantees, anybody that receive our money, there are matrices to follow, and we pay them visit to make sure they're doing their work. Our benefit system is highly honored and highly awarded. It's been doing very well.
Thank you. Now we're now at the point of the last question before closing statements. And the last question, and for this question, we're going to start with Mike and then wrap around to James, Peter, George. And the question is, at the end of 4 years, what will success look like for the healthcare district and our community?
In 4 years, we will have survived the recession that's coming. We will be recognized as the leading healthcare center in Santa Clara County. We will be head-to-head with Stanford, PAMF, Valley Med, and everybody else that we think of as healthcare providers in this area. We will have gotten our leapfrog ratings up. We will be unsurpassed in outcomes, in patient outcomes, and in quality of care. And we will be a place where our staff, our medical staff, and all the frontline employees are proud to work at the best healthcare facility in the Valley.
Thank you. James?
The hospital district and the hospital corporation are financially secure at this time. They have strong and healthy reserves. And so as a recession or a slowdown in our economy approaches, we'll do well. At the end of 4 years, we will continue to be innovative, and we will continue to have the prominence in regards to our healthcare services and the facilities that we provide those services from. We will have reached out more significantly to our communities of Los Altos and Palo Alto and Sunnyvale and Cupertino and Mountain View to make sure that they have facilities and services that are close to them and accessible and excellent ratings.
Peter.
In 4 years, we'll be recognized as the leader in healthcare transformation in the Silicon Valley. El Camino Health will be in your mind, in your conversation, the healthcare service that you want. The hospital and the healthcare system will be financially secured that can enable us to provide the highest quality of care possible. It's going to take time to get there. It's going to take a lot of work, and we need your cooperation and support. Thank you.
George.
Well, in 4 years, you're going to have to scratch and bite for every little bit of progress. I'd like the hospital staff to be more engaged into why they're there, want to be there. I'd like the hospital to have a very strong partnership with PAMF and the Stanford physicians. They're great physicians, they make great partners. I just don't want them to be the only partners. And most important to me, I want to see the major flaw of trying to help the independent physicians fixed. I'm going to spend my 2 minutes closing hoping to describe what I think the problem is, what I think the solution is, and really why I'm running.
Thank you, candidates, for responding to our many questions from the audience. We're now going to give you 2 minutes each to make your closing statements. And we're going to do the reverse order that we used from the opening statements. So that means that we're going to start with James, then go to Peter, George, and end with Mike.
Well, I thank you again for taking the time and being interested in coming down and listening to information about this very important organization. There's the El Camino Healthcare District has more tax money than any other, except for one in Southern California, hospital district in the state of California. So it's vitally important that we make sure that we have people who have the investigative experience to make sure that the information that's being provided is true, accurate, and in the best interest of our community. I have the tools that are necessary to do the job. I've been a person that has questioned many different things that have gone on in government, both when I was a police officer and as a member of the city council. And in this past year, I served on the Santa Clara County Civil Grand Jury. I led 2 investigations during that time, and my committee members commended me at the end of the service for being a tremendous investigative tool for them. I will work hard, to make sure that your tax dollars are being used in the proper way, that we get the most for the money that we expend, and that we look out for the people within the purview of our sphere of influence. And again, thank you very much, and I hope that you will vote for me on November the 6th.
Peter.
On behalf of employees of El Camino Hospital, that includes physicians who've been there for more than 40 years, myself, and everybody else, nurses that will not go to any other hospital, committee members, and patients who call El Camino Hospital their hospital. I want to spend a second to talk about safety issues. I don't want you to feel that this is a terrible, lousy dump you don't want your grandmother to be in. In the last 12 months, we do not have any red alert or orange alert. You understand how bad those are when there's an alert. Patient fall is almost down to 0. We're not tracking it anymore. The newspaper talk about it. C. diff, which is a terrible infection that the nursing home patient claims, have reduced to the lowest nationwide. We don't have CVP infection, and surgical infection have also completely decreased. In my opening statement, I mentioned to you about my track of success record. My experience are reflection of my passion for health, for the district. It also represents my ability to communicate and obtain collaboration to reach the goal to the best system for your health. I am your advocate. In this turbulent time, you need a physician of many years' experience and a strong voice to be on your side and to be on the board. I appreciate your vote.
George.
Oh, I hope I can say this in 120 seconds. The major flaw with the physician strategy is that the independent physicians don't have the reimbursement rate that allows them to survive. If you're PAMF or Stanford, you get paid more than twice as much as an independent for the same thing. They get it because they're organized and they have a big footprint. Independents are single, alone, and it's not changing. They've gone from 80% of the staff to 30%. The hospital plan doesn't address that weakness. It will continue to be a weakness no matter what the plan is, and from what Dr. Fung has said, I infer that they're talking about a medical foundation. First of all, I don't think it should be such a big secret, because once you release things after you've decided them, there's no room for input. But I also don't agree with El Camino forming its own foundation. It's $100 million. There are great foundations elsewhere, people that don't compete with us. John Muir, Washington Township, they have good contracts. If we find that as the solution first, we can bring reimbursement rates that are survivable to the independents. It adds to whatever plan they have. But all the foundations are trying to get bigger. PAMF is at Burlingame, San Mateo, Palo Alto here, Santa Cruz. Why are we building an island? Let's leverage off one that's successful, saves us a lot of money. They like it because they get a bigger footprint, they'll get better rates. The only thing I ask for is local governance. I think that can go a long ways towards getting rid of this risk of being independent.
Mike.
All right. So I was talking about my government experience. I wanted to include the amount of board work and leadership I've done in the nonprofit world, including being co-chairman of the Los Altos Community Foundation. I've served as president of the League of California Cities, which represents all the cities in California. I've been on the board of the National League of Cities and was on the board of trustees of Lewis and Clark College, where I graduated from. I've also been involved with El Camino Hospital. I ran for the board in 1984 at the ripe old age of 30. I didn't win. And I've been involved with the hospital for 10 years, serving both in the foundation and the Public Affairs Committee at the hospital and with the Genomics Institute. My top priorities are to increase the amount of transparency that the boards have with the public. I have great concerns about the transparency during the CEO transitions that we've had. I want to ensure that the hospital remains a public resource, and I want to be sure that, that the hospital is prepared for for what I believe is the inevitable advent of a single-payer healthcare system, and that is an advocate for that, not doing it grudgingly. I believe I have a proven record of leadership and of governance experience. I believe that the hospital board should reflect all of its communities. It has representation from Los Altos and Sunnyvale and Los Altos Hills, I believe, but none from Mountain View, even though the main hospital is in this town. I'm number 3 on the ballot. I have the longest name, so it's hard to say, but it's easy to pick out. My website is www.casperzak.org, and I hope you'll vote for me on Election Day.
Thank you, candidates. That ends our closing statements. And I really want to thank our candidates for participating in this evening's forum. And I'd also like to thank our volunteers from the League of Women Voters, Los Altos Mountain View, and from the Mountain View Public Library. So let's all give them a big round of applause. So a couple more comments. I believe that the candidates have agreed to stay for at least a few more minutes so that then they can interact with audience members individually. And I did want to comment that this forum has been designed to impart information to all of you, the voters, in accordance with our League's belief that a democratic government depends on the informed and active participation of its citizens. We hope that the insights that you have gained from this forum will help you in making your decision on your election ballot. For more voter information, please visit our Voters Edge website. For there you can find information about additional candidate forums as well as information sessions on county measures as well as the 11 statewide ballot propositions. A couple of reminders: the last day to register to vote or to update your registration is October 22nd. You can cast your ballot now and up until 8 p.m. on election night, Tuesday, November 6th. You can request a vote by mail ballot up until October 30th. And finally, we invite you all to join the League. We have information over at the side table on how to join, and of course, it takes all your help to help us all make democracy work. Thank you very much.